Hi, I'm Ryan Herbst, Chief Strategist at UnifiedCommunications.com, and I'd like to welcome you to a special online event focused on hybrid boardrooms, powered by Teams Rooms and Surface Hub. I'm joined by two colleagues from UnifiedCommunications.com, Joe Dalecki, Principal Program Manager and Architect, and Joseph Living, who leads our Design and Engineering Group. And we have a very special guest here, Greg Barabalt, who is Principal Program Group Manager at Microsoft. Greg, thanks so much for being here. I wanted to give you a moment to introduce yourself and tell us what you do at Microsoft.
Thanks, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite. I am the head of our Teams Room product planning for both the Surface Hub and the Teams Rooms devices. So I look after our strategy and planning for enabling teams in all sorts of room settings, from smallest to largest, and then for today's focus in our boardroom environment.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again. Really excited to have you. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that Q&A is enabled. Greg is a great resource, and so we're going to reserve the last 10 to 15 minutes of this event for Q&A. So please feel free to start chatting in your questions now. And if we don't have time to address them during the live event, we'll try to make sure that we reach out to you as part of our post-event follow-up. So our topic today is top of mind for so many customers. How do we create compelling, inclusive, hybrid experiences in boardrooms and other executive spaces? We've done similar events like this recently on just general spaces, but there are some kind of unique attributes to executive spaces. So let's dive in. I think we got a really fun group here, and we're going to tackle, I think, some fun questions. So Greg, I wanted to start with a question to you. When you think about hybrid, and specifically when you think about it in the context of a boardroom, what does hybrid mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great and very timely question. As people start returning to work now, and really what we're seeing is an acceleration of trends that started a long time ago, actually, with people returning to work now. When we think about hybrid, it's about what you said earlier about that inclusive and collaborative meeting experience, and also equitable meeting experiences. Our goal is to make sure that everybody, regardless of where they join from, in the room, in the boardroom, or remotely at home or in a home office, has an equitable meeting experience. It's interesting to reflect back to a year and a half ago and think about the types of questions that we were getting from customers. Was generally about how do we get the people that are remote to feel like they're part of the meeting. There was this sense that they were outside looking into the room and not really part of the core conversation. And fast forward to today, having lived through this year and a half long experiment and social shift, to people being all remote and all having the same equitable experience with their face in the grid, their own identity and their own presence carried into the meeting. The questions now are shifting to how do we get that sort of experience for the people that are joining in the room? And so to put a boardroom lens on it, in my experience, the boardroom just amplifies everything. The people that are there and the impact that those folks would have, and the need for their presence to be felt in the meeting, is even stronger in that sort of environment. So to us, it's leverage the great capabilities that we've built in Teams, in the Teams Room platform, and then leverage terrific resources like UC to actually put that into the boardroom in a way that's tailor-made for that space.
You're absolutely right, and I think, and you really said it, that if anything, we've kind of flipped this whole equation on its head, because we're sitting on these remote meetings. We can see, we can hear, we can see a whiteboard. We're joining with one click. We're no longer. The question is, how do we now make the folks that are in a physical space, not a second-class citizen, where the remote folks were always in that role? And so it's a challenge, but it's absolutely possible. And so I think that parity of experience that you described is 100% the bar.
Yeah, indeed.
We see that. I mean, just giving them, the right tools and letting them their imagination just kind of drive the experience, and thinking through how they work now and taking that to a whole new level with what we can enable in the boardroom.
Yeah, and there's no question that there are some unique characteristics to boardroom, right? It's the public face of the organization. It's where they often want to put their best foot forward in terms of showcasing technology and innovation. It's also an environment that we had a lot of remote participants even pre-pandemic, and not necessarily kind of loving the experience. And so high expectations, kind of high stakes. I think we all know that. And so and this is maybe a question for Joseph Living on the design side, but I think all of us can kind of chime in here. What are some of the design considerations and kind of unique elements when we think about a boardroom? And also, what are some, are there some common customer questions that we get, or things that they want to do that are not necessarily good ideas? I'd love to get kind of your thoughts. I know in a bit we're going to share some of the designs, kind of talk through some of these concepts, but just curious what goes through your mind when you're thinking about design of a hybrid experience in a boardroom.
One of the key things that we think through on our end when it comes to the design of the boardroom and what we can actually outfit the system with is the makeup of the rooms. In most cases, a boardroom was designed primarily for aesthetics and not necessarily for functionality, right? So we have to think through what are some of the challenges that present ourselves because of the makeup of this room, be it the conference table, the overall sheer size of the space. What are some of the considerations that the key core users of the space are saying, hey, this is a no-go, being things on the table or things in the ceiling. Maybe they have a custom wall that they've put up that is something they're very proud of that we can't necessarily install in. So these are the things that we're thinking through when we start to build out these spaces. One of the key questions that we often get that you see in a lot of boardrooms are kind of individual mic mute. And that's one of the things that we try to typically push customers away from, being that they often create a false sense of security, being that I can mute my microphone and I expect not to be heard on the far end, when that typically is not the case, right? I just because my mic is muted in front of me doesn't mean that I'm still not going to be picked up and sent over during my sidebar conversation by a microphone that's live in front of my neighbor. So those are a few of the things that we think through and we're seeing posed as far as questions to us typically.
Yeah, you're so right. These were built for face-to-face engagement, sitting across the table and having a discussion, and so all of those things. Yeah, I think to Greg's point, everything gets amplified, but with more limitations. If we can't use trying to create that engaging experience with an existing room, it presents for sure a unique set of challenges.
We're often dealing with a unique or elevated set of expectations or qualifications for the equipment, and some additional boundaries placed around how the room operates and functions. And then thinking outside the box, thinking about how do we bring that content in for the boardroom experience. And so we definitely take a lot more into account than maybe a typical small and medium room.
It was assumed in the past, I think, that a boardroom could never be executive self-service. It was always something that somebody was starting the meeting for them, and there was a group probably sitting outside with their fingers crossed, just hoping everything went well. And I think that's the other kind of unique opportunity that exists these days, is that you can create a executive self-service boardroom, and we're going to talk more about the tools for how to do it. But I think we should be long past the world where there was a huge rack of gear and 50 single points of failure and all these kind of moving parts that would have kind of lent both to the cost and the complexity and the reasons that they needed so much care and feeding in the past. So I guess next question, and I really think we're going to have some fun with this one, because we love this functionality. And Greg, you're absolutely the right person, because you brought this to us. But this coordinated meetings experience, where we can take the power of Surface Hub and Teams rooms and create combinations with Surface Hub plus Teams rooms, or multiple Surface Hubs or multiple Teams rooms, and So I want to really spend a little time here. Before we do, I just thought, Joe Delecky, there may be some folks that are listening today that are not familiar, maybe familiar with Teams Rooms, but not familiar with Surface Hub and kind of what value it can add in a shared space. And so, yeah, I just thought, Joe, if you could give us just a moment or two on kind of what is the added dimension that Surface Hub brings in, and then we can talk about how, in this coordinated fashion, it all comes together.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I certainly hope that I can at least do it justice with Greg on the call here as well too. But no, I think Surface Hub itself is by itself an amazing standalone, all-in-one meeting device that I can just walk up to, start my meeting, be face-to-face with my colleagues or teammates or remote participants, and share content with them and interact with them live with the content, and really just bring so many different types of content to bear while multitasking and switching between PowerPoint, whiteboard, Teams meetings, while inking and drawing on the screen and being able to just feel like I'm part of the content and part of the meeting. And remote participants feel that too when they show up on the large screen and we're really just standing there face to face. It removes the distance that's between us, and that's really the key thing for us. And for Surface Hub itself, being mobile and being able to take that meeting experience outside of the meeting room and move it into a collaboration space or a huddle space or wherever we really need to get the work done, I think that's where the Surface Hub really shines as a separate device from a meeting room device. And then to your point, the coordinated join brings the best of both together. And I'll let Greg sort of expand on the benefits of coordinated join and where that's gone.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, you're spot on with the use of Surface Hub as a standalone device. And for the right room setting, that's a terrific experience. And we're actually making that better, even better very soon. Later, actually, early next month in June, we'll have Windows Insider update that will put a completely new Teams experience onto that device. One of the things that I love about that, especially with respect to hybrid work, is the new location for the video gallery. So we're moving it up to the top of the screen. So it's right next to the camera. And so for things like eye gaze, where you really want to make that deep human connection with the people in the room to the people that are remote, you're now looking at the video gallery, right aligned with the camera. Much better eye gaze, really feels like a richer connection. So as a standalone device, Surface Hub's fantastic. But what we found with many customers is that they actually wanted to benefit from the multi-screen, the remote console, the rich set of audio and video peripherals that we supported for Teams Rooms, but they wanted the touch interaction and the collaboration and co-editing and whiteboarding capability of Surface Hub. So with coordinated meeting, we basically put the two together and allowed for, actually, to your point earlier, Ryan, about self-service room, we really wanted to bring the one-touch join or the no-touch join, just using voice or proximity, to light up the entire room. So now with coordinated meetings, I can walk in with a phone or just use my voice, say start my meeting, and the Teams Room device joins in, the Surface Hub joins into the same meeting automatically, and now I've got the best of both worlds, right? I've got all the great audio and video and multi-screen gallery from the Teams Room, combined with the collaboration and inking surface on the hub, all together in one room with no interaction needed to get both devices in. Just very simple, one touch, and you're up and running.
Right. Yeah, a lot of the biggest win, I think, for the IT support team will be not having to get calls about an echo in the room, between multiple audio devices, and how do I get my content into the meeting. So having all of that together, I don't have to bring my own device, and I'm able to share content and leverage the power of the video and audio from the Teams room. It just kind of makes sense, and I think that's a really powerful experience, and we'll see that in a few minutes here.
And that day in the life where I walk in, and to your point, the meeting start is super simple. but I have this opportunity to have, it may start as a sit down, I'm kind of watching and consuming and hearing, but there's a moment that we want to engage further, whether that's through whiteboard or we want to create something together. I think that ability to do that in such a seamless fashion. And then from a design perspective, I know, Joe, I mean, this means there's no matrix and switchers and scalers and all the extenders and all the kind of stuff that was there in the past. This is one virtual system from an end user perspective, but there's not even any physical connectivity, and it doesn't mean that there's not some integration that we do in boardrooms. We still do, but this is a much lighter weight set of in terms of the number of devices, the number of single points of failure, the cost structure, and what it means from a functionality perspective is that, I can walk into that room again, meeting starts simply, I can share content wirelessly or through a wired interface. The hubs are providing additional surface area for me to see content that's being shared remotely, but they also are their own canvases for me to be able to generate. I can have content, let's say, displayed in that room that we don't want sent to the far end. Or I could be sharing anything from a browser to interactive whiteboard experience. And so we just love the flexibility of what it brings. But yeah, Joseph Living, I know from your perspective, just some of the idea of even multiple teams rooms, these are all, this functionality is giving us from a design perspective an ability to eliminate all kinds of behind the scenes gear that was both expensive and contributed to kind of the lack of reliability of traditional AV. And so, yeah, I wanted to give you a sense to kind of chime in on some of your thoughts on coordinated join from a design perspective.
Yeah, what this opens up for us is a lot of flexibility around being able to outfit some things that used to be pretty challenging to address. One key one is multiple camera angles that may be needed inside of a meeting space. There are times where users want to be able to show the person at the front of the room and the audience and some other ancillary locations all during the same meeting. And there was really no good way of doing that without having a switcher in line or having a multi-window processor, really expensive pieces of equipment that if they go out, your entire room is down because everything is tied in together. Now, what this opens up for us is now, since they're all individual, but still giving you a seamless join all together, you get all of these feeds. You're able to address these specific use cases that are starting to grow and we're starting to see more often with things that we can just pull out of a box and set up in minutes instead of having to roll a truck and have a guy sit there and program for days on end to try and get you the experience that you really want. So we're really excited about where we see this going as far as the needs that we're able to meet.
Right. No, it sounds great.
I
think. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Just to add one quick thought on that, you mentioned about the single points of failure and actually the hardware and the devices that go into the historical version of keeping these connected. But the other angle is human error, right? People do make mistakes when they interact with the equipment in the room. And we once saw, people coming into rooms and they want to join to share content on their laptop. And as soon as they join, they create the howling and the echoing. And by putting this into the Teams software and focusing on the coordinated meeting experience holistically across the devices, it also removes the human error part of it. So now you can't join because of the proximity sensing. You can't join and have your microphone on and create howling, which ends up creating a much more satisfying meeting experience. That is frustrating when people join and you hear the loopback, the howling. So having that go away it really leads to a better overall meeting experience, higher meeting quality.
You're absolutely right. Are there, team, some examples that we can share of some recent boardroom designs that we can take the audience through?
Yeah.
Yes, there are. I'll start with Joseph here and we'll switch over.
Great. Yeah, let's take a look. And so Joseph, maybe you can, I think we've got 3 or 4 or even 5 examples here that we can run through. And maybe Joseph, you could just maybe tell us what we're looking at in terms of kind of core equipment. And then let's talk through kind of the experience and what we were going for with this design and what it really means in terms of day in the life.
Absolutely. In this one, what we were looking at, we were actually approached and given the opportunity to kind of have a blank slate as far as what we envision a future boardroom possibly looking at. So you're seeing a table that's really set up for kind of more of an engaging experience, a face-to-face experience with the remote participants taken into consideration. This is dual 98-inch displays up in the front of the room, in the center, flanked by a pair of 85-inch Surface Hubs to give you that overall next level of collaborative experiences that you guys are speaking to previously with auto tracking cameras in the center to always be able to give a good framed shot of the person in the room that's talking, to be sent to far in, and a pair of touch panels at the table. So whether it's so that way, if we want to have an executive to come in and they're just kind of self-service this meeting, they can just come in, push the button, join, they're kind of off to the races. And then a secondary panel where if they needed someone to be able to kind of proctor this situation, and they could kind of be off to the side and have full control of what's happening in that meeting space.
So yeah, essentially we have a dual display Teams room, which are those inner displays, and they're surrounded by the Surface Hubs that are in this coordinated meetings experience. And in kind of the scenario we're looking at, somebody's sharing content, and so it's duplicating that content on the hubs. But I could walk up, and I think part of the design of this room is it lends itself that I could walk up and, without kind of getting right in front of the camera, walk up to one of those hubs. I could turn on the camera and start using the whiteboard at the hub itself. I could open a browser, share that content. I could go sit back down if I wanted to. And in this scenario, we were given the kind of the architectural liberty to think about the space and the furniture. And you can just see that this is much more of a square room than a lot of the boardrooms that are more rectangular. And that opens up the idea of being able to do quite a bit more from a remote engagement perspective. And so it's not that we couldn't take the same concept and pull those Surface Hubs over to sidewalls, but it wouldn't be exactly the same experience. And so I think this one is helpful to talk about, because if in some cases, we want to consider furniture and room shape and size if we're really trying to go for an ultra engaging experience, both in the room and remotely.
I love this view. It's a beautiful room, so fantastic job. But there's some things that I would point out that I think really make this room exceptional, and it's the curve of that table does a few things. It promotes lighting so that people are well lit, their faces are well lit, and again, in the interest of hybrid meetings, getting the people in the room to be very visible for the people that are remote creates a deeper human connection, and you benefit from things like body language from people in the room, see where they're looking, just really well lit and just nice framing for the people that are remote. The other is, because of the curve, everybody is kind of equidistant to that center camera. And you have a really nice way to do tracking and pan across the whole room and see everybody equally. The traditional spaces that are more rectangular, or especially the longer tables with people sitting on both sides, you end up with cameras that kind of look at the side of someone's head when they're talking across the table. Or if everyone's looking at the screen, then everyone's looking at the side of their head. So this does a really nice job of keeping everyone's face in view. And other thing it really does is, aside from the giant screens on the wall, the technology kind of disappears into the space. So what you really see is the aesthetics of the room. You have these beautiful chairs and table, and one very simple console there that's in view on the table, but the microphones are invisible. You really have people focused squarely on the other people, the remote audience, and the content. It's a really, really well done room.
Thank you. All right,
I think this room kind of showcases the importance of that command central feel, right? The feeling like we're all in this together. We're all going to make some really important decisions here, and we have the tools at our fingertips, the data and the content and the remote participants right there in front of us to be able to have these types of important conversations. I just love the look and feel of this one, and love that they gave us some room to think architecturally about the space. And when you merge the two together in such a cohesive fashion, there's some amazing things that can come out of it. So.
All right, we'll have to roll through the rest of these fairly quickly. We'll have to roll through these. Sorry about that. Fairly quickly. So
the next is a studio room with dual displays and a Surface Hub.
Agreed. Yeah. So this concept, in this case, customer was looking for a room that was fully optimized for remote engagement. So the concept here, they have made some decisions where they're going to be on, I would say, the side of not a lot of physical real estate. They're going mostly remote. And so they wanted their executives to be able to walk in and have ultra engaging experiences. They wanted kind of a studio feel. And so I think there's two concepts here. And this one, we're looking at a dual display Teams room along with a Surface Hub over to the side. And it has that kind of full feel. And then I know this is another version that same customer looked at, and this one takes it a step further, where it really wanted to have as big of a canvas and to focus on those remote participants as much as possible. And so while this is dual display Teams room, you can think of this 165-inch video wall in front of as the video display on the Teams room. And then down below, the Confidence style monitors are the content side of it. And then we've got Surface Hubs on both walls. So we could have, let's say, two executives standing here and or depending on if somebody's left-handed or right-handed, they may gravitate to one side of the room or the other. But we really had a lot of fun with this concept. And so I'll let you guys, any kind of thoughts on this? This is a little bit different. This is a stand-up experience. This is more of a studio feel, and allowing us to leverage the large meeting capabilities of Teams to where this could be a pretty substantial audience. And you can see that we've got our large gallery view on the front of the room. And so curious on your thoughts on this.
Great for town halls and large engagements and live events. So definitely it feels very studio-like, and you could be projecting out to a very large audience and still be look and sound great in this space, and still have access to all the tools that you need for collaboration and as you said, confidence monitors as well too. So
I love it. The thought I would add here is that one, I love the use of it for 3 devices. The 2 Surface Hubs and the Teams room is awesome. It's super clever. But also, I think it does a really nice job illustrating the flexibility of the platform. So we tend to think about the Teams room device as the out-of-box, put it into a small room, focus room, even large meeting room, with really not a lot of adaptation to the space, where this is very bespoke for this environment and this need. I think it just does a nice job. Like for me personally, I love it because it shows that our platform is doing what it was designed to do and creating that flexibility. So nice.
Great. Yeah, let's move on to the next example. This was this is unique. I think this modular furniture presents a unique set of circumstances. Obviously, it means that we can't mic on the table. We definitely have to mic from the ceiling. But I think in this case, the vision was 2 really large canvases and wanting some wow factor in that boardroom. And so it's essentially a dual display Teams room. Audio is in the ceiling, but I know, Joseph, maybe you can chime in. In this instance, we're in all of these scenarios in the boardroom, we're looking for a video experience that is not just looking at the whole room. It's able to get kind of up close and personal. And so when someone is speaking in that room, that we can get to a similar kind of frame that we get on the remote side of the meeting. We're not just looking at a reference shot of the room. So I know that was part of the part of what this was designed for, right, Joseph Living?
Yeah. So what we did with this one to enable the capability to actively frame or accurately frame who is speaking it's actually all just being triggered by what mic on or what lobe on those microphones is actually active during while someone is speaking, and recalling a preset that is kind of set up by the user. So we in collaboration with the end user, we come up with presets to program into the camera, and based on that lobe, it's recalling those presets to get the ideal shot within the space. So this is another way of creatively making the room work the way that we want it to, without having to put a lot of extra gear to make this happen.
So in the first two rooms we looked at, those are also tracking cameras that are just fully automated and AI based. And I think in this scenario, it was something that the customer wanted to do that was a little more customized. And so we're able to use IP cameras that are certified for Teams and a ceiling-based audio system to be able to create that experience that they were looking for. Yeah, let's take a look at kind of last example as well. And so in this, this we would classify more of, when we look at it, it looks more like a training room or a multi-purpose room. But this customer used this as a boardroom as well. They rearranged the furniture, and there wasn't a huge budget here. And what I really like about this design is that this was essentially, this could have been a DIY project on the customer side. The equipment that's in here all came out of a box. There's no DSPs to tune. There are cameras on both sides of the room. We can talk about why somebody might want to do that. But this was a very simple, low cost, but elegant solution. And it did address one of the core requirements, which was they wanted a camera coming both from the front of the room and in the rear of the room. And yeah, maybe let one of the others on the call talk about where that would be useful. Why would we want multiple cameras in that room?
Yeah, one of the key reasons, or the reason we're most seeing customers ask for the camera, is really just to have an eye on the presenter, right? If I have someone at the front and I am going to give a presentation to the C-suite or to board members or what have you, but everybody can't be in room because you have people who are key stakeholders for what's being discussed, but they have to be remote. They still are able to feel like they're in the room during their presentation, and so that's a key reason for multi-camera, and a very big need as of late, as we're starting to move into more of this hybrid environment where so many of our people are remotely or have to be remotely engaged.
Yeah. And certainly in a room like this, it could be reconfigured, different orientations. Having multiple camera gives us some flexibility in how you lay out that room. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We want somebody remotely to see a presentation that somebody physically is standing up in front of an audience. We need a camera in the back of the room. If we want to sit down and have an experience like this, where we're all kind of looking at some remote participants, we need a camera in the front of the room. And so yeah, it was great to be able to deliver that kind of functionality. And then again, on the audio side here, unlike the prior examples where we have audio in the ceiling, we're delivering a similar capability from essentially a large bar on the wall. All right. Well, let's see a couple more, maybe one more question before we move into. Hopefully, we'll have time for. Well, I think we've got time for one more question before we move into Q&A. And yeah, I know that for return to work is obviously coming. People should be focused at this moment on things you can do right now, and there's some amazing things that you can do right now. We're sharing some of that. But I did also wanted to, since we have you, Greg, just to talk a little bit about futures. You guys, Microsoft shared at Ignite a vision for a next generation of Teams room experience, and I wanted to see if you could give us an update on that, how it's shaping up, and when we may expect to see that kind of thing coming to a Teams room near you.
Yeah, well, first, there's a lot in this picture that I kind of want to unpack a little bit. Before we get into the when part of it. The first is the stage. Obviously, there's a big, new, beautiful stage here that really captures a few things. And one is giving you complete use of a very broad, wide aspect ratio display. So we're doing some work in our stage to eliminate the boundary, remove the bezel effectively. If you were to put in a dual projector room or an LED wall room, to really let us treat the entire thing as one giant display and span content across the two. So you're seeing that shown here. You're also seeing a really fundamental change to the gallery and putting people along the bottom edge of the gallery. They're intended to be at face level with the people sitting in the room. They're all horizontal, so we're not stacking people in the grid, which is a pretty unusual way to look at people in a conference room. Normally, we all sit side by side. And we wanted to create a good eye-level, life-size experience for the people remote with the people in the room. The curved table as well. So we're creating some guidance around how to equip the furniture in the room to facilitate eye gaze, like I mentioned before, and really giving that face-to-face experience while it's also beneficial for the folks that are in the room together. So it's very easy for someone at chair number 2 there to glance to their right and see somebody in a chair down, a few chairs down, unlike a traditional room where people tend to sit in a straight line on each side of the table. The last thing here that you don't see is actually the audio component. So one, the microphone in the room, we would love to see it be an intelligent speaker, a feature that we announced at Ignite and is actually coming available very soon, within actually just a few weeks. And that product will enable the people that are remote to identify who it is in the room that's speaking. Things like the meeting transcript are going to show the name of the person speaking in the room and what they said, which really creates, like I was saying earlier, that presence. When I'm in the room, I want people to know that I'm there. I'm not just one little face in the crowd. I have a good presence in the meeting. And the other part of audio that you don't see is that we're bringing positional audio to the stage. So that if you're sitting at that table and you hear a voice coming from the left, and you glance to the left, it's going to be from the person that's sitting on the left side of that gallery. And what that does is really reduces meeting fatigue. In the studies that we've done, we found it to be very mentally exhausting to hear all of the audio coming from one speaker, just one channel, and all blended together. If we can hear separated audio, somebody speaking on the left, I hear in my left ear, somebody on the right, I hear in the right ear, our brain just really efficiently parses that, and we feel less tired at the end of the meeting. So those enhancements are all coming to Teams rooms throughout the rest of this calendar year. Intelligent speaker available right now. You can actually buy that device today, and the software will update very soon and continue to update throughout the year. This stage will develop as a dual screen video gallery and will evolve into this view. So lots of goodness that's coming to the product, and almost all of this comes in the form of software updates. So if you already have Teams rooms, these are things that you'll just start to see. If you don't have Teams rooms yet, this is a great time to go and start as people are coming back and have every room be capable of this sort of a rich meeting experience.
Thank you.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to jump to Q&A because I know we just have 5 minutes left. One of the questions we had, and it relates, I think, to the first image we showed of that boardroom with the dual 85-inch hubs. Are those 4 independent hubs, or are they daisy chained? Do the hubs retain independent? How does it work between the hubs? And so, I thought we'd just kind of describe that in the first picture we showed in the boardroom that had two 98-inch displays in the center, and on the outside were 2 85-inch Surface hubs. But there's no physical connection between the Teams room and the Surface hub. They are all just kind of joined to that Teams meeting. That coordinated experience allows them to join. We get to define when that meeting takes place, which of those devices carries the primary audio. In this case, that would be the Teams room. What cameras turn on, and likely to start, it would just be that there's tracking cameras in the center of the room. But to the question on additional cameras, there are cameras inside both of those Surface hubs. So if I walked either to the hub on the left or the hub on the right and wanted to, let's say, start a collaborative session with a whiteboard and engage our remote audience, I could turn on the Surface hub's camera while I'm up there, and I could turn it off as soon as I finish. The Teams room's camera was the primary camera was still on. So at that point, we'd have 2 views of that room: me in front of the whiteboard, as well as the room itself. But we have the ability to turn on and off cameras using the same familiar experience. And so you think about that for an executive. They've been on a Teams meeting, anybody in that room, when they walk up to that hub, they're going to see the same camera button that they see on the Teams client, and the same thing that they see on. And this is that beauty of this concept of what Greg, you and team are delivering, which is the familiarity of this experience is translating across all of this. And so folks that walk in that room, they don't need to know about what coordinated meetings that means. They don't need to know that this is a hub and a Teams room. They're going to walk in and find one system that works together that's just intuitively working the way that I want. But it's supporting either a sit-down experience where we just want to meet and present and consume content and have an engaging meeting with remote participants, but it's also allowing us to go further, to be able to create things together, to be able to ideate, to be able to do more of what we did in person when we got in front of a whiteboard, or we brought in a room PC to be able to bring some of our own content in. So love that concept. Hopefully that clears it up a little bit. We've got a lot of granular control around what camera's on and which audio we use in that coordinated experience. I think we have time for one more. And Greg, I don't know if this is a question about direct guest join, which is the functionality that allows a third-party service. So today I could forward in addition to Teams meetings and Skype meetings, I could forward a third-party meeting from WebEx or Zoom to a room. There's a question on if Microsoft is going to be adding other services to the direct guest join capability beyond WebEx and Zoom.
Yeah, yes, for sure. And we're talking to several right now. I can't reveal who yet, but stay tuned, and we'll be making some announcements about that really soon. But yes, our goal, the strategy for that is allow you to install one room device in that room, just the Teams room, and have no blocks, no issues joining meetings of any type. We don't want customers to regret putting a device in because they occasionally have to join a third-party meeting. So yes, we will make that available for as many meeting services as we can.
And I think we have time for one more question. So we talked about, we showed an example where we had cameras both in the front and rear of the room. And there was a question about how are we doing this, because Teams rooms are not natively supporting multiple camera. Well, they support a primary camera today and they support a content camera, but a second camera, a camera beyond that is not supported today. And so that particular solution is using the extensibility functionality that is built into Teams Room. So the manufacturer of that MTR has a built-in camera switching platform, and you engage that by selecting room control on the interface. So it doesn't have an external kind of third-party switcher. It's just built in to the concept, and you have the option when you pull that up to be able to select each of those cameras manually, or we actually could engage both of those cameras at the same time. And the image that you're looking at of me right now could be split in two, where you saw both the rear of the room and the front of the room. But I guess while we're on that topic, Greg, maybe in terms of support for additional cameras in the room inside the native interface, anything you can share there?
Yeah. So it's a really good example of we're seeing our community installing devices in these ways where they're leveraging third-party tools. As that becomes common, we're going to bake it into the platform. So we will bring multi-camera switching into the platform. It's actually in engineering right now. My expectation is we'll have that in market in Q3 in some form, probably TAP, but available fully by the end of the year, and provide the kind of switch that you just described. So I can have the user switch to back of room, front of room, and you'll be able to name them and have a very intuitive interface for switching.
Wonderful. Well, we are at time, and I would like to say a very special thank you, Greg, for joining us today. Sure. This was a ton of fun. And for all of you watching either live or on demand, the team here at unifiedcommunications.com, we would love to continue this conversation with you. We will follow up. There were a lot of questions that we couldn't get to. We'll follow up with you in our post-event follow-up. And we dedicated today to boardrooms, but want to make sure that we're clear that Teams Room and Surface Hub, these concepts are enabling kind of next generation collaboration in spaces of all sizes and budgets, from huddle rooms up to auditoriums. And we're going to be offering a complimentary Teams Room and Surface Hub shared space planning session led by one of our Unified Communications architects to any of the attendees of this event. So please be on the lookout for that in our post-event follow-up if you'd like to participate. And with that, big thanks to our presenters, and it is a wrap.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.